This article on student engagement looked at two differently structured schools of two different samples. The first school was a traditional structure where school decisions were made primarily by administration with little regard to what students actually wanted, where grades did not offer feedback. The second structure was non-traditional, where school decisions were made by committees of students, faculty, and administrators, where students earned credit instead of grades, and the evaluation were pass-fail based on mastery and amount of work completed. The hypothesis of this article was that non-traditional structure would elicit higher levels of engagement than the traditional structure. They went off a theoretical perspective, saying that quality of students' involvement and experience during learning was based off of psychological, educational, and developmental perspectives. In this study, students were asked about levels of interest, enjoyment, and concentration on a given task. They then completed questionnaire assessing student demographics that reported race, ethnicity, and gender. And they also completed an experience sampling form that allowed them to fill out reports on intervals reporting location, activities, companions, and emotional/cognitive states at time of signal. They were also given open-ended questions such as, how well were you concentrating? Did you enjoy what you were doing? Which were scored on a Likert scale, as well as items on the experience sampling form, including what were you doing when you were signaled and what was the main thing you were doing. Findings from this study found that most of the time was spent doing school-related activities, and this is the case in both school structures, where most of the students were completing over 40 hours of schoolwork that included extracurriculars. Students at the non-traditional school reported higher levels of engagement in school than students at the traditional school. Students from the non-traditional school also reported higher levels of engagement in lecture, collaborative learning, and independent work. This was more likely to produce higher level of student engagement than attending the traditional school. However, students at the traditional schools reported higher levels of concentration across the three types of instructional methods, but consistently low levels of interest and enjoyment. In the discussion section, this article talked about how collaborative learning methods are positively associated with academic engagement, additional positive outcomes beyond examples of achievement, and pro-social behavior. Classroom time spent primarily in interactive formats is more engaging and could be used in combination with lesser proportions of lecture and individual work. They also noted that lower levels of engagement may not be a student problem, but rather a teacher problem, where students at the traditional school were receiving passive instructive formats such as lectures and were more engaged during collaborative learning, which was not commonly used. High levels of concentration at both schools may account for higher test scores, but low levels of interest and enjoyment should raise red flags for continuing motivations for students at both schools. Findings from the traditional school may indicate students may be engaged more outside of the classroom rather than inside of the classroom. And students at the non-traditional school are shown to be more engaged in school than out of school. In conclusion, this article states that schools should consider providing a variety of instructional methods with more attention given to collaborative learning, because that's when students are really allowed to participate and be engaged with their peers and teachers and really put their best effort forward on assignments and classwork.